G'day and welcome to the program. I'm David Lipson. Well, after several weeks of hand-wringing and some robust internal debate, Labor has finally decided that it will stick to its guns on the carbon tax and ultimately block Tony Abbott's attempts to repeal it. It means that the government will have to look to either Clive Palmer or a double dissolution election. Well, joining me now to discuss, the Finance Minister, Senator Mathias Cormann. Thanks for your time today. This will frustrate and delay the government's attempts to axe this tax, won't it?
Well, Bill Shorten and the Labor Party are in denial about the election result. The Australian people overwhelmingly voted to get rid of the carbon tax. The Labor Party is thumbing their nose at the Australian people. That is arrogant. And of course, it's also dishonest, because we've got to remember that in the 2010 election, Labor said there would never be a carbon tax. In the 2013 election, the most recent election, Labor said they had already abolished it. And now, of course, they want to keep it by just amending it. I mean, the Labor Party is all over the place. Nothing has changed. Bill Shorten is too weak to stand up for what is right. People across Australia will know every time they get their electricity bill. This is electricity bill Shorten, again, forcing them to pay more for their electricity than what they should.
Labor says it will move an amendment to actually change the legislation or attempt to, so that it would shift from a fixed price to a floating price, an ETS. Now, that's the position they took into the election. Is there any chance in hell that the government would support that?
The Labor Party is playing games, whether it's a fixed price carbon tax or a floating price carbon tax. Our commitment is crystal clear. The carbon tax must go because we want to take pressure off families, because we want to put downward pressure on electricity prices, because we want to help strengthen the economy, and because we are committed to deliver what we promised during the election campaign. The Labor
But
Party
an ETS would put downward pressure, wouldn't it?
Scrapping the carbon tax will put more downward pressure on electricity prices, and that is what we promised during the campaign, and that is what we will deliver. We will not stop until we have got rid of Labor's carbon tax.
Does that mean you wouldn't hesitate to take this to a double dissolution election?
We will not stop until we have delivered on our commitment to scrap the carbon tax.
Okay, so no comment specifically on the double dissolution election to avoid
I mean,
that.
I think that comment is totally clear. We will do whatever we need to do to deliver on our commitment to scrap the carbon tax. I mean, obviously, our preference is for the Parliament to respect our mandate, to respect the will of the Australian people, to let the government get on with what we promised we would do during the election. And of course, in particular, given Labor promised during the campaign that they had already terminated the carbon tax. I mean, I've got flyers here in Western Australia, and flyers from the Labor Party that were distributed during the campaign right around Australia, where they claimed that they had already abolished the carbon tax, and now they're telling people that they want to keep it, but just amend it.
Well, to avoid a double dissolution election, the coalition would have to deal with the Palmer United Party. He has a commercial interest in seeing the carbon tax scrapped. In fact, he owes more than his companies owe more than $6 million in carbon tax payments. Should he abstain from any vote, or should his party abstain from any such vote?
There's a long way to go until we get to 1 July next year. I mean, Bill Shorten has proven himself to be a very weak leader. This is round one that we're about to enter into in the Parliament. Let's see what he does when the legislation, if we get into that circumstance, let's see what he does when the legislation comes back before the Senate a second time. Now, in relation to Clive Palmer, I saw the very strange comments from Anthony Albanese yesterday in relation to how members of Parliament should deal with conflicts of interest when voting on the floor of the Parliament. I just wonder whether he is suggesting that members of the Labor Party who are members of the union movement shouldn't be voting on anything related to industrial relations matters.
Well, Clive Palmer's power in the Senate will depend on whether or not there is a complete rerun of the election for the Senate in WA after 1,375 votes went missing. Do you see any other option apart from a complete rerun of that election?
Look, I mean, the Electoral Commission is a statutory authority which acts independently as it should and as it must. What happened in Western Australia is very disconcerting. I mean, I feel for the four candidates that are caught up in the middle of this. There are obviously a range of processes now underway, as there should be. There is an independent review happening. Obviously, after the election result has been declared, there is a process to go through after that. Somebody would have to challenge the result. The High Court would have to make a decision. I would not want to preempt what happens in all of those processes. But I mean, suffice to say, the integrity of our electoral system is very, very important. What happened here shouldn't have happened. You know, obviously this needs to be resolved in the appropriate way.
Does the AEC need a shake-up?
Well, look, I mean, that's not for me to comment on. Let's just go through an orderly process. There is a review now into what happened specifically in relation to those ballot papers. In the normal course of events, after every election, there is an inquiry by a relevant parliamentary committee on electoral matters into the election that's just taken place. After all of these processes have taken place, we'll make some decisions as appropriate in an orderly fashion.
Okay, well, turning to the car industry, what's your view on more government assistance to prop up this ailing industry?
Well, our policy on this in the lead up to the election has been crystal clear, and right now we are implementing our policy. I mean, we want to see a strong and sustainable and successful car industry, but as we said, we are having a Productivity Commission inquiry into how that can best be achieved. That inquiry is now underway. The terms of reference have been released. We'll await the outcomes of that inquiry, and the government will make appropriate decisions in a calm, methodical and orderly fashion.
Labor says it might be too late for an inquiry and that the car industry, notably Holden first of all, may pull out before the findings are actually released at the end of March next year.
Well, again, I mean, our policy on this has been very clear for a very long time. We don't conduct the affairs of government in the ad hoc, chaotic and panicked fashion that the Labor Party did under the leadership of Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard. We are running a mature, orderly government. We are running through mature and orderly processes. We are treating taxpayers' money with respect. We want to know that before we make any further decisions, that our decisions and any taxpayer-funded support actually helps to deliver a strong and sustainable car industry for the future.
When Tony Abbott was asked about this week, he was asked about the risk of losing the industry. His answer, he said, the economy was going to evolve. What did he mean by that?
Well, I mean, let's be very clear. We are committed to a stronger, more prosperous economy. We are committed to a strong and sustainable car industry. But it was the Labor Party that hit the car industry with the world's largest economy-wide carbon tax. It was the Labor Party that hit the car industry with a $1.8 billion fringe benefits tax hit. These are two massive taxes, massive burdens on the car industry that our government is committed to remove. The Labor Party standing in our way when it comes to scrapping the carbon tax. So we don't take any lectures from the Labor Party in relation to our support for the car industry. Now, obviously, economies evolve all the time. And of course, it's important that we make considered decisions in the context of the economic circumstances of the time. And it's important that the decisions that the government makes in relation to support for the car industry are based on considered evidence, on considered views. And of course, that is why we promised before the last election that we would have this Productivity Commission inquiry, which is now underway. And we will just continue to implement the promises and the commitments that we made before the last election.
On another matter, China has now, along with Indonesia, sought clarification over reports that Australia has been using its foreign embassies for spying purposes. Now, without going directly to those specific allegations, because I know you won't want to comment on national security, has this episode in any way damaged relations with any of our neighbours and trading partners? And is this bad timing when we are trying to lock in a free trade deal with China and others?
David, you're quite right. I won't be commenting on national security matters, except to say that Australian agencies comply with Australian laws, and also to say that our relationship with China and with Indonesia, our relationships with China and Indonesia are very strong, and I'm sure will continue to strengthen into the future.
But this episode can't help those relations, can it?
Well, I don't think that there's anything else I can add to this.
OK, fair enough. Well, we'll leave it there for now. But Finance Minister Mathias Cormann, thanks so much for your time today.
Always good to be here.